This is live stream number 3 on the day. And yes, this will in fact be the last one should no breaking news happens after we're live here. And of course, if that happens, then we'll come back. But we have a lot to talk about tonight. And that's why we have this focus, specifically this segment today, on trade rumors regarding the New York Mets. Because if you guys have been following along over the past day or so, yeah, there's been a lot of trade talk going on. And I've already touched on it to a decent degree thus far from our post-game live stream and the trade that happened earlier between the Yankees and the Mets. If you haven't checked out that content, please make sure you do. I'm hoping that you guys will enjoy that just as much, if not better, than enjoying this conversation here. But everyone here just chiming in the live stream, thank you guys all so much. You know the drill by now. Smash that like and subscribe button. Always does mean a lot, everybody. And everyone on replay, thank you so much for being here as well. I'll probably crop down the stream so it's not as long for the people watching replay in comparison to people watching live, so I can answer all your questions. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about tonight, guys. I'm excited to get into this one for sure. Shout out all my members here in the live stream and just everyone. I'm going to do a quick roll call like I usually do. I see Explosive, Harrison, Kish, great member on the channel, Miguel, let's see, J Bros, JR, John, Edwin, great member on the channel, Mike, Brennan, Charles, Al, Mike, again, Brennan, great member on the channel, Ricky Card, how's it going? Solomon, my friend, how are you? Dolores, WizKid, David, great member on the channel, Steven, Aiden, everyone that's just chiming in whenever you're watching. Appreciate all you guys. William, great member on the channel, Brad, Alan, thank you guys for being here. So, like I said, we have a lot to get into tonight, folks, because as many of you saw by now, the Mets were very, very close, very close. They were on the 1 yard line, basically, to having a blockbuster trade transpire yesterday. And the reason why I put blockbusters, they were labeling that, but you can make the argument that it's not a blockbuster and compare, like, what do you define as a blockbuster? Either way, it still would have been a significant trade, but it did fall through thanks to the Mets deciding not to do it. That was something that across social media, most Mets fans were not in favor of that trade. And I myself was not in love with the idea either, but it all went in hand with exactly what these specific details were. I was really holding judgment until we had a final, something made official on the deal, but the deal never happened. So to break down rather quickly for the people that aren't aware on what transpired over the past day, I would really like to do that before we go forward and what is potentially next for the Mets, because the Mets are in fact not done making moves. They're active in the market as we speak, and as much as Billy Epler may try to tell you otherwise, trust me, he's working. It's been reported numerous times already, and he's been working in the silent night. He's someone where the Mets and Padres had trade discussions for really quite literally over the past week, and it just became public yesterday as they got to that final 1 yard line, but it fell short. So, again, what is this? When did this start? Well, if you guys remember correctly, going back a couple weeks ago, right really when the lockout lifted and the offseason started to pick up, over those following couple days, throughout the intense part of the free agent frenzy, we saw that the Mets were being pursued by the Padres because the Padres have had interest in Jeff McNeil, Dom Smith, JD Davis. What do all those players have in common? They're all debatably tradable players to varying degrees that were expected at least one of them to be dealt by now this offseason, given the current roles and statuses on the club. And because of that reason, the Padres have shown interest because they are definitely a team that could benefit from one or multiple of those players. But at the time, it was reported that really no talks had gone any far. But then, as we saw from upwards of a week ago, it's been going on for multiple days prior to the Jacob deGrom news. And I would like to make this clear for people that were saying, oh no, the Mets are acting in a desperate manner when they started discussions with the Padres. No, they're showing their hand. They're showing a desperation, which means that they're not going to have as much leverage. This won't be a good deal. That wasn't the case because the Mets had been negotiating with the Padres numerous days prior to Jacob deGrom having his MRI and that revealing that he's going to be out probably at minimum 2 months, between hoping that he comes back healthy once he gets his imaging done a month from now, and then he needs basically upwards of another month to ramp up and get ready to go back in game shape, essentially, right? So regardless, the Mets have been doing negotiations for numerous days, not just with the Padres, but other teams as well. So for people that are wondering, are the Padres the only team that the Mets have been talking to? No, they haven't. When the initial report came out yesterday morning at 2 a.m., the report from The Athletic said right in the beginning that the Mets have been in conversations with multiple clubs regarding potential trades, but the Padres were the main thing that became public. Now, about this Padres proposal, what we saw, from many of us saw, was that, yes, you're looking at Chris Paddack, someone that the Mets have been very much high on from reports. Now, Paddack's biggest issue is more so the fact that he had a partially torn UCL last year. Jacob deGrom might know a thing or two about that, even though that he's going to say he never had that. So who knows exactly what his health status was last year. Either way, partially torn UCLs, we know that story a little bit. That's something that players can picture, and it can naturally heal itself. But of course, there's also risks of that being a ticking time bomb, and before you know it, you might need something serious like Tommy John surgery. Paddack, numerous years of control left on his contract, had a fantastic rookie year, got in that stupid beef with Pete Alonso about who deserves to be the NL Rookie of the Year. It was obviously Pete Alonso. Paddack had not a great stretch in the second half of his rookie year. But then last season, had his struggles. His advanced numbers were a little bit better than his normal ERA. And this is someone that, according to reports leading up to the potential trade yesterday, was that the Mets were very much interested in Paddack and really viewed him as a 4 starter in this rotation potentially, because they are that high on his stuff, really feel that they can work his changeup into something elite for his arsenal. And the Padres have been historically known of recent years to not do well when it comes to developing pitching talent. We've seen that story before, and I'm sure we'll see it again. So that does add up. But before I get to that donation by Ferrari Frank, thank you so much for that, my friend. I just want to continue here for a minute, because as we escalate along in these talks, and I was hesitant as to when I would talk about this, because one, more details were coming out, but two, it wouldn't just be Chris Paddack for Dom Smith. You had, of course, Emilio Pagan, who's been a solid reliever, had a really good season 2 seasons ago. Last year wasn't great. I think he had a strong start to the season. I'm not sure if he was a sticky substance merchant or if he just was inconsistent last year. I'd have to deep dive his numbers further. Not a terrible reliever by any stretch, but definitely didn't have the best of seasons last year. Has been on already 2 teams over the past 5 seasons. He got dealt the Mets yesterday. That would have been his 3rd, so take that as you will. And, of course, the big one, the one that caused most controversy was, yes, that being an Eric Hosmer. Now, for all the people wondering, no, you get Eric Hosmer that entire contract. No, that was not going to be the case. The Mets killer back with the Royals in 2015. I'm not going to touch on any further than that. Hosmer's contract would have been eaten, the majority of it, by the Padres. The Mets would have only paid $6.25 million per year for each of the following 4 seasons to ride out the remainder of his contract. But what was reported not long after this proposal was that the Mets had full intentions of flipping Hosmer right away, and the Chicago Cubs looked like a likely suitor. Now, what would have the Mets landed from the Cubs and say doing a 3-team trade where they get Hosmer, but then he goes to the Cubs right away? We may never know, because this trade fell through, and it does look like Eric Hosmer was the X factor into why this trade never happened. Because of the money, the Mets obviously want nothing to do with Hosmer, and you need a third party. But given Hosmer's contract, he was not able to be dealt twice back to back unless it had his approval. Now, naturally, Eric Hosmer, I don't see why he wouldn't approve to be traded again to a team that would play him every day, when he knows damn well that if he came to the Mets, he will be a bench/part-time player. He wouldn't be playing every day. He'd be DH, getting some time at first base when Pete Alonso, you're going to decide to not give it to him, or as a late-game defensive replacement, but that's it. So Mets really didn't have interest for Hosmer, and rightfully so, and it does feel like that was the X factor in the trade falling through, because the Padres really wanted Dom Smith from what's been reported. So I'm going to address a donation quick, and then we'll go forward, because the question is, are things done with the San Diego Padres completely or not? Now, I don't have the answer to you right now, but what I can tell you is that I find it hard to believe that there's zero chance the Mets may still make something happen with the Padres, because the Padres made a move today that only increased the likelihood of them trading away one or multiple starting pitchers that they currently have on their roster. But Ferrari Frank, thank you so much for that $10 donation. I really appreciate that, my friend. Hi in the chat for Frank, and make sure to smash that like and subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the stream. As always, folks, what's up, Wari? 2 things. One, I went to the Mets season ticket holder day yesterday, and it was cool. They gave me a free gold Pete bobblehead, an authentic Nike black DeGrom jersey. That is sick. I love to hear that, my friend. I hope you had a fantastic time. Absolutely love to hear that. I'm jealous. I really am. I hope you had a great time, though, Frank. Again, appreciate that donation. I hope you enjoy what is hopefully going to be a fantastic Mets season. And yeah, that's awesome. You know, a gold Pete Alonso bobblehead. I know they're coming out with a new polar bear one. I have the one beside me of like him in that kind of superhero polar bear outfit. I'll grab it in a minute. But I know that they have one coming out this year where it's like this polar bear head as if he's wearing like a mascot costume, where you put it over his head as he's swinging the bat, which is very cool. But no less, Frank, love to hear that, my friend. I know you're not the only season ticket holder listener in here. So to all you guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Okay, so let's talk further about the Padres. Can the Mets still make something happen with the Padres? Well, before I do that, Michael was beyond generous to send this $20 donation my way. So hype in the chat of Mike, fellow member on the channel as well. Thank you so much. Wardy, it has to be Castillo. You get a young pitcher with long-term number one ability. Sure, you give up a lot of your farm, but look at the staff when DeGrom comes back. Now, plenty of time to replenish what you lost. Michael, I would love Luis Castillo just as much as the next guy. And I do have him as a potential trade target on the list because I don't see how the Mets don't at least ask what his value is. But I think that's where things stand on the Castillo front. I think he is the most unlikely pitcher among the people that we have listed here that we'll be discussing extensively today that I will see get dealt at all. Not just for the Mets, but for anywhere for that matter, because the Reds have already shown a reluctancy to part with Castillo, just like the Schmucks have been doing each of the past 2 years, where they throw him in trade rumors and take him out right away, because that's how Cincinnati rolls. They go half in a lot of things that they decide to do. And don't get me started on that organization any further. But I appreciate the donation a lot. Thank you so much for that, my friend. But talking again about the San Diego Padres. The San Diego Padres landed a starter today that the New York Mets really could benefit from, if I'm being quite honest, as more rotation depth, as a number 3, number 4, or even number 5 when everything's fully healthy. And that's Sean Manaea. Sean Manaea, we talked about how many times this offseason. A towering southpaw, respectable veteran in the game. Traded to the Padres today for just the Padres number 12 and number 26 prospects. Now, when you look at that trade in itself, you're wondering, why in God's name could the Mets not make that trade? Why didn't other teams? Why didn't the Yankees? Why didn't the White Sox? Other teams that liked Sean Manaea, why didn't they do that deal? Well, what that tells you is that clearly they didn't do that deal, probably because of the fact that the Oakland A's had something going with the Padres there where there was more of a comfortability. Maybe they like the prospects specifically from the Padres more than other organizations, even if they had more to offer. We may never know. But for the people that are going to jump to conclusions and say, oh, then why didn't the Mets do that? They're idiots. Why didn't the Yankees do that? They're idiots. Why didn't the White Sox do that? They're idiots. Trust me, there's always context behind things. Same reason exactly why Bob Melvin, the longtime manager for the Oakland A's, San Diego was just allowed to interview him while Melvin was still under contract as manager of Oakland A's this offseason. Oakland said, yeah, go ahead. I mean, if you could take the payroll away from us, go ahead, go do it. So he stayed in Cali, went to San Diego. I do wonder if that was a factor at all in that trade transpiring, knowing that, yeah, no one knows Sean Manaea better than his longtime manager throughout his entire career in Bob Melvin. So I'm sure that connection did have a certain level of say. And the Padres, again, not known for their pitching development, are looking for guys that are veterans that have certainties to their game, where you know what you're getting from, and that is Sean Manaea. So the point I'm trying to get at here now, everybody, is, okay, the Oakland A's trade Sean Manaea to the Padres. Does that mean that the Padres are still a team that you can make a trade with? 1,000%. And the Padres are desperate. They really want to get rid of that Hosmer contract. They wouldn't mind whatsoever getting rid of that other contract to that outfield, that being in Will Smith. So there are Will Myers, pardon me, not Will Smith, not the man that smacked the other guy on stage not all that long ago. All jokes aside, though, Myers is a contract they don't want to keep. And the Padres now, when you look at their pitching depth, they have a lot of depth. Do they have really a clear ace? No, they do not. And that is what they lack the most. But depth is not a bad thing. And now when you look at guys that really are susceptible to being dealt, now more than ever, you are looking at Chris Paddack. You're looking at Ryan Weathers as well, who was a rookie southpaw for them last year, former first-round draft pick back in 2018. Didn't have a great first rookie year, but again, who knows? The Mets may have some interest there for a young lefty with plenty of years control, still 3 minor league options. They want to add that type of depth that could help them down the road. So he's a guy to keep in mind too. And Sean Manaea, I just threw up there for the sole purpose of maybe there is a possibility they would be willing to flip Manaea again, should that be more incentive to getting Hosmer's contract off their books. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No, but I just did want to put Manaea there because nothing's impossible. I will say, though, out of the pitchers that feel like a likelihood to be dealt, I think Manaea is far less likely than, say, Paddack, Weathers, and potentially one other piece. Whether you're looking at a pitching prospect like Mackenzie Gore or someone that's been out of the pen that, you know, has dealt with injuries in his career, and Dilson, I can't even say his name wrong. Right. Dinelson Lamet. I'm so bad at names. I do apologize, folks. But I think that's what I'm trying to emphasize here is the Padres are still a team that out of all the remaining options right now have the most pitching depth to part with, that in which they're still a contending team. So they're a team trying to win now, but they still have pitching depth. Snell is a big question mark too. Do I think Snell could be partnered with? Yes. But do the Mets have enough interest there, if at all? I don't know. I really don't know on that front. Of course, if something happens, we'll find out. Clevenger is starting the season on the IL. So Manaea, yep, he makes more sense there. So regardless, Padres have multiple arms that they would be willing to part with if it helps them get rid of their bad contracts. Will the Mets do something like that? Again, we'll find out. But the fact that they were in talks for numerous days tells you that they are quite active. And it's not just with the Padres, it's with multiple clubs. And when you look at other teams that could potentially, potentially make sense in a trade, obviously the Cincinnati Reds, Luis Castillo's the pipe dream, Tyler Mahle, also a little bit of a pipe dream because he will be costly, but there is a asterisk, not a bad asterisk, just to put something of note with Tyler Mahle here and Luke Weaver, respectively, for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Those are two pitchers that reportedly the Mets had showed interest in and had talks to varying degrees during the offseason about. So does that make it look like that there's a good chance the Mets would land either of them? Your guess is as good as mine, but it's important to look at. Those are definitely two pitchers that the Mets, at least we know, have been tagged to. Maybe that's the exact reason why the Mets do not land either of them, because most, if not all, moves the Mets have made this offseason have been out of nowhere, in the sense where how many reports did you see prior to the Mets making a move? Little to none, for the most part, especially with their latest starting pitching acquisition, Chris Bassett. There was literally no, other than rumors that we discussed on the channel that were strictly rumors, not where you saw an actual report of the Mets having talks with the A's or anything, was Chris Bassett in that news. But I do want to address a couple donations before we go further, folks, and I'm going to answer a lot of your questions. Let's see. Gallon is hurt. To what degree is Gallon hurt? Let me know in the chat, because I was not aware of that, so I do apologize. Let's see. Pat Metz, thank you so much for the $10 donation. For as much as I love DeGrom, don't think we can ever count on him staying healthy for a whole season when he returns. Need a solid middle starter, and don't think Paddack was the answer. I wasn't opposed to Paddack. My gripe was if that trade were to happen yesterday, and they would have flipped Hosmer, so I wouldn't gripe about that. They would have flipped him for like a prospect or something from Chicago. My only gripe with Paddack was his partially torn UCL. I fully trust in Jeremy Hefner and the analytics program, the development that the Mets have and their staff. I trust the Mets, and I do believe that they would be able to make Paddack into a very good pitcher beyond what we've seen already in his young career. But if Paddack, say, went down with an injury this year because of the partially torn UCL last year, and or just struggled and didn't meet what the Mets were expecting from him to be an immediate impact in this rotation, then the Mets automatically lose that trade if Dom Smith goes on and thrives in San Diego, which you can fully expect, because Dom, when healthy, is a very good bat. We've seen that plenty already in his career. Last year, he wasn't healthy the entire season. My man's had he had a shoulder issue. He had like something, not a full tear, it was something going on. But yeah, if you look at the Mets and that proposal, it would have been a situation where it made sense, but only if the Mets truly got what they were hoping for, and that was still an uncertainty. And there's a good chance the Mets still may land Paddack in a different deal. So I'm not opposed to Paddack. I just want something where it really is going to benefit them, and they need to make sure that what they're banking on becomes a reality, because Paddack is the farthest thing from a certainty. Regardless of how the Mets feel, he still needs to prove it at the end of the day. Like when I compare Paddack with Tyler McGill, I think Tyler McGill is a better pitcher on the forefront than Paddack right now. And right now, the Mets rotation is Scherzer, Bassett, Cookie, Walker, McGill. Paddack's the odd man out. So you got to make sure if you're going to trade an asset, that you're not just trading an asset for the sake of trading another asset if you might not even have a significant impact on your team right away. So that's my thoughts on the whole Paddack front and everything. Not opposed to him. It really just depends on what exactly we're dealing with here. And Charles, thank you so much for the donation as well, my friend. Worry, do you think the Padres acquired Manaea to entice the Mets into trading Dom Smith to them for Manaea along with Hosmer or Myers? See, here's exactly what we've been talking about, Charles. Do I think that there's potential for that? I think that there's some level of potential. I do think it's more wishful thinking than not, though, regarding something like this. Again, Clevenger is starting the season on the IL. He's coming off of Tommy John surgery. He's never even pitched a game for the Padres yet. Great pitcher when he's healthy, but he hasn't been healthy yet. They want to make sure that they have quality depth. They got that in Manaea today. How willing, if at all, are they willing to flip Manaea again? I don't know. I think the Padres are far more willing to trade the susceptible guys in a Paddack and a Weathers, those types, over Manaea first. Lance Lynn is shut down for 4 weeks. I know. White Sox, Garrett Crochet just got Tommy John. Now Lynn. I mean, man, oh man. They're just getting the worst luck. They really are. But again, I appreciate everyone in the chat, guys. Thank you all so much for being here. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. As always, folks, it really, really does mean a lot. Help us get 300 likes by the end of the live stream would always be appreciated. If you're watching this on replay, regardless, smash that button if you're enjoying the content. But like I said, I'm going to be answering a lot of your questions. I do apologize. I haven't answered every single one of them yet, folks. I really just want to get everything off my chest first before we just go into a complete deep dive of a Q&A. But I would like right now to my viewers in the live stream is to put a poll up and see how you guys are feeling. We're almost at 100 likes rates, so thank you guys so much for that. Continue smashing that like and subscribe on. I would like to pull this up right now and get your guys' thoughts. I'm going to put a poll up real quick, see what your guys' thoughts are. Give me 1 second. Okay, and the poll is up. There we go. Love to see it. All right, guys. Caleb Smith is an interesting one, too. I'm glad you brought up Caleb Smith because you can utilize him in a lot of ways. And I'm actually a little disappointed in myself that I didn't put him on the graphic. I'm actually very happy. Michael, shout out to Michael Shin in the chat for bringing up Caleb Smith. He's an interesting name. I'm actually going to pull him up on Fangraphs real quick. But yeah, I'm glad he brought up Caleb Smith. I don't know why he blew over my head like that, especially when thinking Arizona, right? Yeah, Caleb Smith didn't have a great season last year with Arizona, but it wasn't terrible. He definitely would be a quality depth. But again, that's strictly depth. That's like Luke Weaver. Who the Mets showed interest in Arizona, where it's just more so depth than anything else. Is Gallen realistic? I wouldn't say he's realistic, no, because I think his price will be too high. Okay, but let's get into this, folks. The Mets have been in discussions for quite a bit now with other clubs. And whether that means that they're going to go out and land, a Frankie Montas, which I would love, but again, I think that is not going to happen. I think that the likelihood is a Paddack, a Weathers, a Weaver, maybe a Molly, but I think it's still going to be. I think it might just be out of reach for them. Either way, though, I do believe the Mets are going to land another starter from everything that we've seen at this point. Again, if you guys are subscribed to The Athletic, then you know too. If you're not, it's fine. But just to reiterate everything is that the Mets have just been in constant dialogue with teams. They've been continuing negotiations. And Billy Epler famously said today that they weren't, but that was a lie. That just simply isn't happening. You haven't seen the poll yet. Why haven't you seen the poll on, folks? I'm not sure why you haven't seen the poll yet. I think there's something, for whatever reason, YouTube Studio is acted up a little. So if the poll never popped up for you guys, I apologize. It didn't pop up for you guys. Okay. It is what it is. I don't know what happened on that front. No worries. The poll was just asking what team do you guys prefer that the Mets trade with. It's not a big deal. I don't know why it didn't pop up though. And yeah, no, the Mets are not getting Harvey. No chance. No. Stop them at Harvey. Okay. Can we stop? Please. Same thing with Bartolo. Love Big Sexy, but stop it. Okay. And I know Orioles are considering re-signing Harvey. That is true. Indians, I wouldn't mind, but I don't think it'll happen. That's the big thing. It's not the fact that I would mind doing a deal with Cleveland, the Guardians, I should say, not the Indians, right? The Guardians now. But still, I just still don't see it happening. Give me one more second, folks. I do apologize. I'm just trying to see if I can get the pull up because it's kind of bothering me that it's not showing because I don't understand why it's not showing. So yeah, just give me 1 second. Yeah, why aren't you showing? There we go. The poll is still not up for. Oh yeah, okay. Now let's try. I think the poll will work now. Okay. A lot of people watching replay. I'm sorry. I know you're like, what is this? But give me 1 second. Okay, now let's try it. Okay, there we go. Now I asked away. Brewers is a good team too. Brewers is a good team too. I didn't put Brewers on this list just because I think Brewers are such an outlandish possibility right now. I really do. Just because it felt like the Brewers, the most connections we had was regarding relievers with Hader and stuff, and that clearly is not happening now. Brewers, however, Eric Lauer is a pitcher that I think the Mets would like. Young, controllable, actually profiles, not far off from Chris Paddack in that sense. I actually, the more I'm talking about it, the more it actually Lauer checks out as a guy that isn't just young, controllable, but still has upside that they could work with. Adrian Hauser is another one that I think would be a solid fit for the Mets, but I don't think the Brewers would be willing to part with. I think they would want to hold. I think Eric Lauer is the man out of that rotation that they have to part with anyone. I think that you could get Lauer at the right price. So that's another guy. Another team to consider. But Brewers, you always gotta be careful when you're doing stuff like that. A's are too smart to trade with. Cole, if that was the case, then the Mets wouldn't have traded with them already. So not sure how that one adds up too much. And the A's do have an open vacancy at the first base position. And the Mets do have a really, really quality first baseman that they can part with, who is not a free agent for 3 more seasons. Team control, young, looking to be in an everyday role. Almost sounds like that's exactly the player the Mets have been trying to trade most than any other player as of late. And that is, in fact, Dom Smith. So that is why the Oakland A's, when you look at why they would be a good fit, outside of Frankie Montas being the obvious fit, is the fact that you can part with Dom Smith and potentially other assets. JD Davis, I could even see being a solid fit. They don't have Chapman there anymore at the hot corner. Yes, JD is not known for his glove. It's quite insulting to go from the best defensive third baseman in baseball to arguably the worst. I understand that. But young, controllable assets, along with some more prospect capital, may be able to get something done. Now, Montas's market is interesting because I know the Minnesota Twins have shown interest in Montas, as has other teams. So we're going to find out what happens on the Montas front. I've heard some rumblings on him, not too much as of late. There's uncertainty if he'll even be parted with because of the fact that he still has multiple years of control on his contract. So it's not like the A's need to trade him, but they know that they could probably get a good deal done if they really just continue these negotiations, assuming they, if they stopped, but I don't think that they have. But yeah, I mean, if you're basing things on what's a best fit for Dom Smith, other than the Padres, because if you went the Padres, he'd play everyday first base. Voit would be at the DH position. They would split time with both of them, but either way, they'd both be playing every day because Hosmer would get traded, assumably. Other than the Padres, I mean, you really have to look at a team like the Oakland A's. Can Cincinnati, if you trade, maybe you take on a Joey Votto if you could somehow get him out of Cincinnati, even though I don't see that happening, or a Mike Moustakas contract, right? The Mets were willing to do Eric Hosmer, but it fell through because of maybe Eric Hosmer not being willing to get traded somewhere else. Again, I could be wrong. Mike Moustakas, however, on a fat contract, not a great player anymore, washed in a certain sense like his former teammate Eric Hosmer. Maybe that's something of interest for the Mets, assuming that it hasn't been already. And that way, that can make things a little bit easier for you should you try to land a Tyler Mahle. So pairing a bad contract to get yourself a young, controllable pitcher is definitely something that is feasible for this team, as long as it doesn't really hurt their roster right now, or it makes them worse. So trying to improve themselves for right now and going forward. So they all check out. They all make sense to varying degrees. But to my people watching on replay, that's where I'll probably cut things off for now. All the latest on the news front, what's potentially next for the Mets. If you're watching live, stay here, folks. I'll be answering all your questions. But again, for the people on replay, I know that you guys probably don't want to just watch me answer questions a lot and stuff like that, but talking more about things. The Mets are, in fact, destined to make a trade probably before opening day or close to, and it wouldn't be outlandish at all if they do make a deal with one of these teams, that being the San Diego Padres, Oakland A's, Arizona Diamondbacks, Cincinnati Reds, or potentially maybe a team like the Milwaukee Brewers, Cleveland Guardians. They have pitching depth, but we haven't heard anything. Maybe that's the reason why it happens, or maybe it doesn't. Either way, if you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like and subscribe on as always. And whenever a trade or news or any type of coverage regarding the Mets does happen, we'll be on the channel to break it down right away.